The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of our tradecraft analysis of 2010's Red, which is meant to be read as Retired and Extremely Dangerous. Our protagonist, Frank Moses, played by Bruce Willis, is definitely both of those. If you missed out on part 1, there's a simple solution. You might want to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so that you can always stay caught up with us.
And hey, you know what also really helps? Tell a friend about the show. Help us spread the word. It's the best way for an indie podcast like ours to grow. We will go ahead and catch up with Frank and Sarah right after they escape from their fact-finding mission at Langley in this episode of Spies Like Us. Now, on their way out of Langley, because Frank made the incredibly stupid and unnecessary decision to go kick down Carl Urban's door, he got shot during the escape. And that's our, I would say, flimsy excuse to get into Victoria, the Helen Mirren character. First thing I'll say on that, the idea is that we're sold is we got to find someone that can take a bullet out of Frank. Well, let's go talk to Helen Mirren. I'm positive that Frank Moses has plenty of other places he could go to get a bullet taken out of him without raising questions. But they just want to bring Helen Mirren into the film, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is a typical situation where you got someone where right? They know her, right? I'm sure he could have gone to a lot of people, but they know her. You know what I mean?
I think they should know a lot of people. That's what I'm saying.
You're right, as in it's just getting Helen Mirren into the film. But in a situation like that, you got people you trust, right? They trust it. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier, was they really don't have their guard up. They kind of know each other, and it's all like a joke, right? We know each other and we play the game.
You know what? A simple line of dialogue could have stitched that up for me. They could have said I can't go to Bob. We're in too deep. We gotta go to someone serious. Okay. When Joe is introducing Victoria, Helen Mirren, to Sarah, he says she's an artist with an RPN. And well, what the fuck is an RPN? And only these kind of weird ass fucking super gun nerds might find that he might be referring to a certain series of light machine gun called I'm gonna butcher this because it's Russian. Richnoy Pulemyot Nikonova. So there's there's maybe one gun out in the universe that might be an RPN, because what he's trying to convey is that she's good at killing people.
Right.
But there's no reason he would, when talking to a civilian, use that as an example. Doesn't make sense. But anyways, enough about the guns.
Yeah.
You we like Helen Mirren.
We love Helen Mirren. I love that she hid the gun. And it's that short version of an MP5. I don't know what that's called. It's the one with the handle on the front and there's no stock to it. But it's basically an MP5. I know that's that same gun. But I love when she's tell Marvin to step down before he hurts himself. And we get a quick shot. You'll never see this if you're just watching the movie, not paying attention. He's got this fake ass bush in front of her window behind her with like a gun pointed at her. It's hilarious. It's fucking hilarious. And I'm giving mad plus spy points to both her hiding the gun under her roses and like Marvin's little bush look hiding it's adorable. Like it's hilarious. Anyway.
At this point in the movie, Morgan Freeman quips, looks like we got the band back together. And it's a good time because we've collected almost all of the information that our heroes need vis-a-vis the list of names, both from the reporter's list and from the Guatemala file. And our characters are going to make certain deductions from that. We're actually going to take a pretty detailed look at how everyone reacted to the lists at the time different pieces of information were given to them and whether it makes sense. Spoiler alert, a lot of it does not. But in summary, the part of the dark secret of the film is has to do with Guatemala in 1981. And David, tell us what was going on in, if anything, in reality in Guatemala in 1981.
The U.S. has a long history with Guatemala. I think one of the most famous ones was the CIA in 1954 basically backed a coup and dumped a bunch of money into the election to help prevent the Communist Party from taking over. But the 81 Guatemala thing would have been a lot more covert and probably didn't come out because in my research, the only involvement with the U.S. was after 81. And this is, I guess, the only record we have. So this have to be actually like something covert that hasn't been released. But prior, this is about the coup of against General Romero Lucas Garcia, who in 78 became president. The Guatemalan establishments and administrations prior to Garcia also had a lot of problems with violence and using the government enforcement and like Guatemalan army using violence against peaceful protests. And it was kind of a big deal. Specifically at this point, there was a protest against the violence, but the organizations that were heavily left Marxist and communist organizations that were the workers that were protesting the violence were kind of put down by anti-riot gear that was donated by the United States. So it's not like we weren't overtly helping out a little bit, but like I think in their reference to 81, it's going to be this specific coup because this ended up leading because even though Garcia had promised not to be violent, there was like death squad killings of a lot of the protesters. And I think what 81, because the thing with the vice president that's discussed in red is that the vice president came and killed a bunch of villagers and had to be taken out. And that's the big secret they're trying to keep or like prevent from getting out. Well, from what I read is during the civil war in Guatemala that had happened, a lot of the villagers were working with the insurgencies. And this was during early 81. There was a huge insurgency mounted against the Guatemalan government, and it was a coup specifically against Garcia. And because villagers were helping to sabotage roads and army establishments, enjoying anything of strategic value to the armed forces, there was also a lot of terrorist attacks in between like 78 and like 82 that the Guatemalan government was trying to suppress. So there was a lot of big stuff going on.
What side is Garcia on?
He was the president. So
is he our guy or is he Russia's guy?
He would not be Russia's guy. The workers' protest movement would have probably been Russia's guy because they were heavily Marxist.
Okay.
I've read, but I don't know. I can't say Garcia was our guy because I don't see any information that's been, I guess, leaked out saying.
Okay, right. But it's not a situation where, like, you know, in the Castro situation, you have Castro was Russia's guy and we were funding the insurgents against him. This Correct. Is a case where it's Russia funding insurgents against Garcia, and whether or not he's specifically in our pocket, we don't like that.
Right, exactly.
Just trying to draw the blue versus red line here, of which side we're supposedly on.
Right. So, and following this whole Civil War thing, Reagan actually put in the budget to send a bunch of money over there in support of the Guatemalan government. So I wouldn't not believe that we were pulling covert stuff during this time period, but I can't find any information that deliberately said that we were involved in suppressing the insurgency, other than the gear that they were using was donated by us.
Right. And Reagan wins the election in 1980. That's when he first became president. So I guess it's 81 is the first year of his presidency. Sounds like he moved pretty quickly to, I don't know, up the stakes. Maybe it was something he felt like Carter had been sleeping on.
Right. But the only thing that I can find that has been claimed that the Reagan administration did get involved was in 82. So this would have been after the protests and the random killings. But what I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised if we did some sort of covert action between 78 and 82 during this whole time. Right. So, and that's why I wanted to highlight the villagers. I believe this is what Red is referencing. The villagers worked with the insurgency.
Right. So let me spill out the plot part from Red, and then I'll ask you to come back and match it up.
Okay.
In Red, Frank Moses and John Malkovich's character were involved in some kind of op in Guatemala in 1981. Also, the vice president, we refer to him as he's currently the vice president in 2010, the year the movie comes out in. He wasn't vice president in 1981. He was just, I guess, some kind of operative. We don't exactly get his resume, but he was involved. And we're going to get some information that he did some, I don't know, crazy stuff, killed a bunch of villagers that maybe didn't need to be killed. And
then
a lot of the cover up. Yeah.
Right. Our guys had to come in and clean up the mess. Right.
Right. Okay. And then that does sound like, because it does sound it was a small village that is talked about in the film, and you're saying that village probably would have been possibly a hot spot of Russian funded shenanigans.
Possibly, but the from reading, these villagers were involved in supporting the insurgency, whether they were Russia funded or they were just villagers helping out somehow. That's what I think Red might be referencing.
Okay. So let's that's great. Thanks for that. I'm gonna try to tackle all of my problems, maybe with the lists, in kind of chronological order. We start out with the reporters list. We know that Frank Moses is on that list, and that's why the South Africans come after him. Basically, everyone on the almost everyone on the reporters list is marked for death. Now, when Frank first sees the list, we're going to find out later there's a commonality of names on the list, which is they were all somehow involved in the Guatemala op. But if Frank was involved in that operation, why doesn't Frank notice that all these names that he sees are all have in common an operation that he did? I mean, granted, it was 29 years ago from his perspective, but, he's supposed to be such a, usually we expect our superhero badass spy people to immediately pick up on those kind of connections. So I'll give it some minus spy points on that.
I also kind of want to highlight again, I think I mentioned this last one, but my number one worst tradecraft is why they even called the hits on the Reds to begin with. I don't think anybody was at risk of exposing this other than a reporter. So I still see exactly zero reason why these hits were called, because it served exactly zero purpose. I don't think there was any threat to the exposure against the vice president, wasn't even Dunning. That was like Dunning was worried that the vice president's history was going to come out and it would screw up his presidency. But then he shoots him at the end. So it's not like he really thought of him as like a high value person.
There's I would call an almost violent stupidity about the fundamental underpinnings of this plot, where like the story is Frank trying to find out why he's on the list, but the fact that he's on the list in the first place, the only logical reason he would be on the list is because he would have known the reason that he's on the list.
Right.
It's an Ouroboros snake eating its tail kind of situation that is, it's busted, I would say. Even though that's like the big one, I'm just getting started. Frank would have also seen Alexander Dunning's name on the list, and that doesn't get mentioned until later. But it is mentioned at our table meeting when we've got the band together that Dunning is the only name on the list that doesn't match the Guatemala file. Now we saw Frank and Sarah do Google searches on everybody that was on the list. So even if Moses hadn't just recognized the name Alexander Dunning on his own, it would have come up in the Google search.
Right.
And that should have triggered bells on him. Call minus spy points on that. But there's another name on the list that they have both identified as not being dead yet. At least it hasn't been reported, which is the pilot. Now, the pilot is the guy that actually flew the vice president out of Guatemala under Dunning's orders to try to keep the vice president's involvement secret. So now we don't know a lot about a lot of people on the list. Like a lot of them are already dead. But definitely between the three people we do know, the pilot, Moses, and Malkovitch, the pilot actually does know the secret. You know,
right.
like what you're just talking about, like why are they trying to silence people that don't know anything? Well, this guy does know something.
Right.
He really does. And compared to Moses and Malkovitch, like he is a soft target. He's just working a job, like, you know, there's no special forces-ness to him. He's just a guy that used to, you know, do some kind of shady helicopter flying for people that paid well, and now he's just working as an aircraft air traffic controller. Right? Yeah. Well, I mean, my big problem with that is after the South African team fails. Well, first of all, I think they should have taken out the pilot first. I think he should have been higher on the list. But even after, you know, once the hit on Moses fails and they go to plan B, which is send Carl Urban after Frank Moses and also send another guy just to try to take out Joe just because Frank Moses talked to him, they should have also like found another guy that should be going after the pilot. Instead, they're going to wait until it's kind of like the enemy. You know, in some movies, we get to see, you know, a lot of spy movies is like, you know, one side versus the other kind of thing. And in some movies, we only see it from one perspective. In some, we only see it from the other. And in some movies, we see both perspectives and both get equal balance. Right. And like the villains are working just as hard to try to win the movie as the heroes are. But then in this kind of movie, it's like, I don't like it when it just feels like the villains just get turned off and just go into complete snooze mode. And, you know, they're not making any decisions. They're not thinking through the situation and they just appear.
Oh, I was saying like they just show up when it's convenient. I mean,
they just show up when it's convenient to the story with absolute disregard for the plot. Exactly.
The only thing I can put together is that CIA bitch was planning on pinning it on Frank at some point. So if he goes and starts talking to people that she could have killed, she could just be like, "Oh, this crazy ex operative just went on a rampage or something." But it's still kind of shaky for this movie because I don't think this movie is that high level strategery, so to speak.
You
You
brought
know?
up that idea previously, and I credit you for that idea being the underpinnings of a much better movie. Is
Yeah, right.
if they'd gone after Moses first, and then as he's like finding his way to the truth, they're along the way killing everyone that he meets, and then they can pin it on him. I think that would have been,
Right.
yeah, way. Plus, I would have added another star to my rating of the movie just for that. At this present point in the movie, this is when they're getting a chance to compare the two lists. The reporter's list has one name on it that is not in the Guatemala list. That's a mechanic for the script to flag Dunning as being a person of interest because he's a name that's on the reporter's list, not in the file. But of course, the file has one redacted name, so they're going to assume that his is the redacted name, and further, he must be under surveillance. I'm okay with them guessing that his is the redacted name, but guessing that that means he must be under CIA surveillance 29 years after the events in the file, minus 5 points for me.
That's hard to argue with.
I would then say also, if you're looking at the two lists and you're trying to figure out like what they have in common and what they don't, well, the CIA Guatemala file also has two names that are not on the reporter's list. So why don't we care about them? Minus 5 points.
Right.
Last thing on that, on those comparisons, I just would say like maybe like, you know, because we'll find out that the redacted name is not Dunning, it's the vice president. So just real quick, like, why did Dunning's name never make it into the Guatemala file? I mean, maybe he's just that good.
Or he's always been black market and they didn't want that on the file. I don't know.
That's all of the quibbles about the list that I could find. It's pure tissue paper. It falls apart completely if you even sneeze on it, or even look at it sideways. But with this information, what they're going to do is they're going to follow up on the idea that, you know, this guy Dunning, which is played by Richard Dreyfuss, is an important person that they should talk to. Try to get to him by having Morgan Freeman dress up like a what do you call, like some kind of
A dictator, like a small,
third world dickhead.
Yeah.
We have established that Dreyfuss is like the CEO of a major Defense Department contractor. So now it's okay with me. Like, maybe the guy is that stupid and that greedy that he's taking these kind of meetings, but it's really a stretch because believe me, when you're already as hooked up to the U.S. Defense Department's budget tit as Dunning would be, like you do not. There's no reason for you to be taking these kind of meetings.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah. But I think we discussed this and we think it might have been CIA bitch's idea. There's this anonymous tip that the Reds are going to go after Dunning or try and meet with him. And they craft this ploy of which I thought was kind of cute. I want to give a little bit of plus 5 points. Like, you know, some third world dictator looking to dump like big amounts of money for black market weapon sales. I think wasn't a terrible attempt, you know, but I think what really made it work is the CIA bitch that's kind of like trying to get the Reds killed says there's an anonymous tip that they're heading to Dunning. And I think when we discussed this, we think she might have called Dunning ahead of time to let him know that these guys are coming. But when we watched it again, it looked like he really didn't know who they were.
Right. And
So
also
she might have planned it out herself to have all of this go down and possibly work to get things together. But it just seems like something was off because Urban later says, "Oh, the whole thing was a trap. They've been pulling the strings the whole time," which I think was her.
well, I'll just flag really quick minus 5 points for our team for
Right.
being so sloppy that their plan to meet Dunning somehow reached CI Bitch's ears.
Right. Which is weird because we never know how that's even found out. Like, to me, she would have to make an inference. Well, they have the lists. They're probably going to go see Dunning. Like, that's about as good as I can get. I have no idea where. That's why I think the tip was made up. Unless Frank sent the tip, which doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, no, I think she's lying about the tip.
Yeah.
And again, like, yeah, it just I think it's a logical inconsistency that she even knows that they're going to visit him.
Yeah.
Now, I had the complaints about Joe surmising that that Dunning would be under surveillance by the CIA due to his involvement in something like from 29 years ago, but he is under surveillance. And he's under surveillance correctly by the FBI because that would be their job, not the CIA's job, correct?
Right. But the only thing I could think of for their surveillance is his maybe black market deals. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, if he's doing this stupid shit like with selling arms on the black market,
Right.
then yeah, he deserves to be under surveillance. But here, the thing I noticed about the FBI's surveillance is that it seems to be, basically, I mean, there's there's a bunch of guys, but specifically there's two guys that are doing the listening, and they're set up in a tent on his property. So that's not an indication of a long-term intelligence gathering operation.
Right.
I mean, those do exist. I mean, some of these operations take years, of listening in on phone calls, but you don't do that, in a tent. So that suggests that the FBI is paying special attention to Dunning just recently, like today or the last couple days. And we have to wonder why. I think you had a decent idea on that one. I think
I think the tip was sent by CIA bitch to say that he's probably going to be. She tipped off the FBI saying he's probably going to be dealing with a dictator, some black. So you guys might want to go check this out because he doesn't seem like it was direct order from anybody. It was just kind of like they were there.
Right. And that seals the deal for me as well. Okay, but then it's gonna wobble a little in a second. But so on the assumption that our team was sloppy, we already gave them their minus 5 points for that, and that she knows that they're going to arrange this meeting. It's totally consistent that she might have contacted Dunning and said, like, hey, they're coming and I'm going to set up FBI surveillance on you. I'm going to lie to them, to the FBI, about like why they're actually there, but their real reason will be there so that when I need to, I can send in my Carl Urban guy and we'll catch these red guys. And so she's like planning it with Dunning.
And the shot at them comes out of nowhere.
Right.
So Urban had nothing to do with the shot. The FBI didn't have to do with the shot. There's just an unnamed shooter. So that's why I think it was probably her that planned this whole thing out to get them there and get them caught.
The part where that wobbles again, and I can't quite keep it like, in frame, is if she arranged the FBI surveillance, then I mean, I assume she informed Dunning, but the way that Dunning reacts, now clearly he knows he's under surveillance for some reason, and that's why he does this like fake recording thing. But that part doesn't necessarily, well, maybe it's just a ploy to put the Reds at rest. Maybe he really is totally read in on the whole situation from the whole time.
Mhm.
I could buy that if we make just two assumptions. One, that our red team was very sloppy, which,
Mhm.
it's not forgivable, but we could make that assumption. And two, if everything he's doing in the scene was all an act, he knew they were coming. He knows the FBI are out there, and he knows the FBI are out there to be on his side, even
Mhm.
even if the FBI doesn't know that they're there to be on
Right.
his side.
Right. Exactly.
And so he just sets up the recording, but then, I don't know, weird that the recording starts skipping and the FBI say, like, "Oh, go, go, go."
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Just weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
I feel like swamp water is like just coating me up to the knees at
Right.
this point. Um, Under threat of torture, Dunning says that, this wasn't me. This is the vice president, like the current vice president, and he went on a psycho killing rage, and I protected him, and that helped. And they fill in the dots, and that's how you got rich, is because you had this super deep connection with the vice president on his rise to power. I
Mhm.
don't like the fact that they just take Dunning's word for this, and I'll give
Yeah.
that -5 points.
Yeah. So while the team gets in this like secret meeting, they start interrogating. That's when we find out the stuff. One of the things they have kind of in place beforehand is Helen Mirren on sniper duty with an M4 for whatever reason. Um, but she's kind of has eyes on the scene in the background, communicating with them. And this is when she kind of has a girl to girl meeting with Sarah and tells her, "Don't break his heart or I'll kill you." But one of the cool things, she tells a story about how she was dating someone from the KGB. She was MI6 and she was ordered to kill him. And so she ended up shooting him 3 times in the chest. Well, we later find out that that guy is our guy, Brian Cox. And he knew that he still loved him because she didn't kill him. So I think it was kind of, I want to give +5 points to Helen Mirren for shooting him in the chest so that he could survive, but still salvage her career with the MI6 and move on. So I kind of thought that was cool.
So it's like they say, if you love someone, let them go, and if they come back, shoot them 3 times in the chest, and if they survive, it's meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea is once the recording starts skipping, the FBI start doing their raid into the building. Helen Mirren lets them know. This is when, for whatever reason, Morgan Freeman decides somebody has to die and it's going to be him. So Frank, this whole thing really kind of bothered me because I'm not really sure why Morgan Freeman had to die or what the deal was. But the idea is Frank tells Urban that he's coming out, and he comes out in a trench coat, and all of a sudden there's a shot out of nowhere, like we mentioned. No one knows who fired the shot. Urban goes nuts. He's trying to save the guy, and it turns out to be Morgan Freeman. And our guys escape out through the back and run off. Sarah gets caught by the FBI and gets pulled in by Urban to get interrogated. Which, by the way, I really liked that interrogation. It wasn't like super well done, but like I liked the fact that he tried to appeal to her. Like, look, I don't want Frank to get hurt. I know you don't want him to get hurt. Help us out so we can help him. Like, just the language he uses is very solid. Like general
Very much
interrogation.
appreciated on my part. I'll give it +5 points.
But so now they have Sarah, and this obviously pisses Frank Moses off to no end. So Frank calls Urban and starts going on in this whole speech about how, hey, I taught myself a long time ago not to invest, because I know investing is bad and they can use it against you. But then I met this girl, Sarah, and all I ever wanted was to have a life with her. And, when someone has something you love and that person can hurt them
It's an almost indescribable feeling. And then the trace is running meanwhile at Langley, and they trace it back to Urban's home. So we basically discover Bruce Willis's play to get Sarah back is to basically threaten Urban, being like, I know where your family lives. I know that you love your wife and your kids, and I'm at your house right now. And if you do anything to hurt Sarah, I will take everything you love and rip it out of your life. I wanted to mark this my number 2 best tradecraft.
That right there, that is basically like my chess strategy in a nutshell.
Right.
Like, I'm always about, like, what, you threaten this piece. Like, my first thought usually is not to try to protect that piece. My first thought is to try to find something that I can threaten of yours.
Yeah. Right.
and make you make the choice.
Then Frank tells Urban, I'm going to go kill the VP, which makes no sense because the idea is he's going to go kidnap the VP to create a situation for a trade-off to get Sarah. He basically made his job of extracting the VP harder for himself I'm marking that as my number 3 worst tradecraft. Why would you even say that?
The only thing possible you could save that with is if you somehow imagine Moses playing some kind of 3-dimensional chess where he wants to make sure that Urban is involved in trying to protect the vice president.
Right.
But
so that he could be a peace later.
It's a real stretch, and it's not supported by what we see in the movie.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's silly, and it really bothered me, and so I'm marking that as my number 3 worst tradecraft. But Frank leaves the folder of the Guatemala file and the reporter's list at Urban's so that he could show Urban, like, hey, everything I told you is actually the case. Like, you're being sent to kill us for the wrong reasons, and here's my evidence. Now,
I didn't like this, but you had some thoughts. I'll go first. I quibbled about this, like, why Frank is putting his eggs in Urban's basket. So far, he's gotten no reason to believe that Urban is a stand-up guy, like he'll show up to be at the very end of the film. Basically, you don't know anything about this guy that he's trying to kill you. So handing him the information felt fuzzy to me.
I think they came in stages, and I don't think he's putting all of his eggs in the Urban basket. What I think is he probably has been in Urban's shoes before, where he's been ordered to kill somebody, and he just has no information. He's like, "Go kill these people; they're a threat." And I think from their interactions, he might have surmised or something that maybe this guy's just doing his job. I've been there before. Let me give him some information. And hopefully it kind of like changes. He gives him a change of heart to where he's going to do the right thing rather than just following the orders. Because, Frank does a lot of different stuff, and I don't think he's just banking on him. It just turns out that it's a really important move later.
In our prior discussion on that subject, you did bring me around because it reminded me of my philosophy of, like, I don't mind when heroes take big risks. When they have no other choice. And right now, Urban's got Sarah. It maybe does make sense to just throw chaff at him. Just anything that, would make him doubt what he's doing is going to be a benefit. So yeah, I can excuse that.
Yeah. So now we go to the big heist moment where they're going to kidnap the VP.
It gets very heist movie vibe at this part.
Yeah.
The music is screaming heist at you.
Yeah. Some like really upbeat, jazzy, like do 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 do. Like it's super. Yeah. It was like stuck in my head for like a few days. Yeah.
Bass is going. Doom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Yeah. Very heisty. Like it's a whole setup. They're obviously pulling all the strings to get this extraction, blah, 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 whatever. Like we discussed this, I don't think that's the right move. They decide they're going to kidnap the VP in a gala for a fundraiser where he's announcing his I forgot what it
He's
is.
announcing that he's going for the presidency.
Right. And there's going to be there's a lot of wealthy people and how to do people, and there's probably going to be tons of Secret Service. I feel like to or from the gala would have been a better idea, because travel is a very weak point. Like, when they talk about, you talk about war games, or you talk about like old war strategy, going after like, the supply chains or something like that. I would think that would be the most dangerous place. But if they went and just hit the car on the way there, I don't think it would be as exciting as this awesome heist moment at a gala.
Our more serious spy movies
Right.
would not choose this big public event as
Right.
the place to try to do what they're going to try to do. And it should be triply difficult because, like we said, it made no sense really for Frank to tell Urban that he was going to kill the vice president.
Right.
Urban doesn't fill the Secret Service in on that fact.
Like, hey, by the way, someone just threatened to kill the VP. You might want to be on alert. It was annoying.
The whole sequence of how they get the vice president out is, I don't want to go into micro detail on some of it because it's not, to me, the most interesting points of discussion, but there are some highlights. First of all, I'd say, like, just the overall plan, they create the emergency that says, like, okay, VP, got to get out of here. Gas. And
Which I thought was cool when Cox was spraying. When I was like, why is everybody smelling weird stuff? And then when he pulled the alarm and he screams gas, I was like, oh, the spray basically made it smell like gas so that people would believe, oh, there's gas.
mm-hmm.
I kind of like that. A little plus spy points for that.
Ooh, it's a good time for me, though, to mention my personal minus spy points on bringing Cox along on this mission. This guy's KGB. I understand he's got a function that he can fulfill, but you've established that Frank Moses has got, these can't be the only people he knows.
Yeah.
Bringing
Right.
a KGB guy along in this mission, just it's very hand wavy story stuff. They just wanted Brian Cox to be in the movie, which is fine. I love me some Brian Cox, but
and they really wanted to seal the love moment with him and Helen Mirren.
Right.
And I think so logistically.
So again, it's like
why he's there.
It makes sense for the story because the story doesn't care about the plot.
Yeah,
it's how I feel about most of this movie. And the movie's so much fun. What I would consider like massive logical problems like this one, they just waltz right past you. This movie's like just flying a finger at logic, like all the time, like while it's dancing on the dance floor and having a great time. And instead of sitting there like and saying like, this is bullshit, I'm sitting there going like, this is fucking fun. Let's do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But these big problems do exist. I got two favorite parts of this bit, and one of them is my number 3 best tradecraft. And even though it's just kind of cute, did you notice that Malkovitch, because they're doing all this passing around, like, infiltrating through different directions, like you do in a heist movie.
Yeah.
A heist scene, but Malkovitch literally shows up in 3 different outfits in 3 different scenes. Like he's a busboy at one point, like a cook at another, and a guest in another. Like every time you see him, he's playing a different role. I like that.
Right.
I wanted to give it some.
Yeah, that was great.
Points.
Yeah.
My other super favorite one, and I really do adore this one, is that he's brought sensible shoes along for Helen Mirren.
Yeah, she takes off her heels and jumps in combat boots.
Mm-hmm. And it's just always been one of my sticking points. Like, like in even like in video games. I mean, sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's okay if you want to be super silly to watch some woman like totally kick ass in heels. It's kind of a sex appeal thing about that. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'd rather watch a woman kicking ass in fucking combat boots.
Right, exactly.
Sensible shoes for the win.
Yep.
And that's a nice little detail in a movie where I wouldn't have expected them to otherwise like have that kind of sensibility.
Yeah.
To say like, okay, we're going into combat now. Hey, I brought you some actual shoes.
Yeah, I brought you some good shoes. Well, the basic plan, though, through this whole heist is to create these huge diversions and kind of corral the team into the exit parking garage, then cut off those cars. They eventually want to funnel him into getting in a car that just has the logo on the side, which is, of course, being driven by Frank. And I wanted to mark this as my best tradecraft number one, even though it was silly for them to try and pull off the abduction at the gala. I liked how they used like indirect fire and emergencies and to try and corral. And as in each stage of the exits, they're whittling away more and more Secret Servicemen, where it just comes down to 2. And I really liked the 50 cal where it took out both of their cars, and then they automatically set it up where it's just firing. So they think that she's still firing, but they're off going, doing something else to continue more of the corralling. I like that a lot. So I mark this as my number one best tradecraft.
I do like the fact that, you know, like they kind of cut off exit A. That'll force them to use plan B. Then they're whittling them down in plan B to a smaller force that they need to tackle for their plan C. And plan C, gets blown up by Brian Cox. And at that point, they're kind of out of plans. And so when it's just last 2 guys protecting the vice president stumbling out onto the street, after being freaked out by John Malkovich's bomb vest, they're completely frazzled, and they'll take any port in a storm.
Right.
You know? And that's why they're willing to just jump into this car that, I mean, it's got the United States presidential seal on the side. Where else are you gonna go? Just jump in, and that's the final snatch. Yeah, that part of it was appreciated by me. So then that leads us to, Frank Moses having the vice president in hand. He's going to basically try to trade him for Sarah, because that's his only concern at this point, right?
Yeah.
Of course, Urban's the one that he, thinks can bring Sarah along. Obviously, Urban still at this point trusts his boss, CIA bitch, enough to tell her about it. She's going to tell Dunning about it. So that's why... during the exchange, CIA bitch and Dunning show up. That's where, I don't know, Richard Dreyfuss, he's the guy playing Alexander Dunning, just kind of does a minor version of a ha 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 ha, here was my whole master plan kind of thing. Right. The vice president seems to be also corroborating the whole story, like, oh, it was Dunning all the time. I mean, at this point too, I go back and I still question, like, if the vice president really had that big of a secret to, I don't know if he actually went psycho back in Guatemala. Yeah,
like from the way he plays it and stuff, it's kind of hard to believe that he went like ballistic and started just slaughtering villagers.
I think
other than his announcement, he did kind of have a sociopathic feel to him. But then when he broke down at the end, I was like, I don't believe this guy was a psycho.
I feel like it's more plausible that something went wrong in Guatemala, and because of his father's a senator, they have political ambitions for him, that just overall, whatever went wrong, they just never wanted his name to be involved in that, at all, right? Because it just would have looked weird and cut off his future ambitions.
Yeah.
And then we get kind of a neat resolution here. We do the usual thing where
the good guy, our guys win. The protagonists win. Yay. And Sarah and Frank get together. That's about it.
Agents, please report for debriefing on this operation. The director will see you now.
When I first thought of like what this movie is reminding me of, remember, like I said, it was like had sprinklings of Romancing the Stone. I think that's something that was in the movie makers' minds. This story of Sarah being forcibly dragged out of her gray, dreary, pencil-pushing life and into the life of excitement and intrigue that she's always read about in her novels, and now gets to experience and, you know, gets increasingly excited by and into. I had a thought that if they had opened on her instead of opening on Frank, I think I would have bought it a lot better. Like, just follow her. Don't show me Bruce Willis. Like, have him on the phone, right? I can hear his voice as an audience member, but I don't actually see him. I'm just following her stupid, boring life. And the first time that I see Bruce Willis is when he shows up at her house.
That's actually, I think it would have been a lot better. We didn't really need that whole opening shot.
I feel like that would have made the whole movie more like her story instead, and make her the primary character that is my audience surrogate, instead of being like kind of a side character, where I feel like in the way this movie is done, like Bruce Willis is my, is my audience surrogate. He's the guy I feel like I'm seeing the movie through his eyes, and she's on the side. I think if you'd redone this movie where I saw it more through her eyes, I'd have bought it a lot better. It's a super fun, colorful, flavorful movie. I totally dug it, even though I was just ticking off all the fucking stupid mistakes that they make and logic inconsistencies. I'm just right down the middle, dude. 3 stars.
Yeah. Despite the tradecraft silliness, but it's a really fun and really, really funny movie that I could watch over and over and over and over again. So I'm actually going to go with a 3.5 on this one, despite the inconsistencies. It's just such a fun movie. I highly recommend it. What are your best and worst?
Number 3, Malkovitch. 3 outfits in 1 op. I just had fun watching that kind of flexibility. My number 2 best tradecraft was Frank Moses telling the Brian Cox character that he flipped Igor, because that's a good moment to like diffuse the tensions between them. And also, who knows if it's true or not?
Yeah.
My number 1 best.
It doesn't really matter if it's true, right? Because it was just a great moment.
It works. I mean, that's all that matters to me. Whether it's true or not, it's the right play. And my number 1 best, I just have a fetish for elaborate, escape plans if anything goes wrong and you suddenly have to get the fuck out of Dodge, and the way that he's got his burn bag secreted under a cement floor that he's got to trash with a sledgehammer. That's right up my alley, buddy. I always love that kind of shit.
My number 3 best tradecraft was when Sarah drops the contacts and the raid team security at Langley comes to stop them, and she just plays it off, improvs really well, and just goes, "The general's dropped his contact lens." I think that was really helpful. My number 2 best tradecraft was Frank going after Carl Urban's family as okay, you have Sarah, I'm going to threaten something you love to ensure Sarah's safety. I liked that a lot.
That one should have probably landed higher on my list in retrospect. That's a good one.
Yeah. The number 1 best tradecraft, I just liked all of the tactics during the heist of corralling the Secret Service and the VP, and every stage whittling down how many Secret Service agents were there to protect him, and then forcing him into their car, pretending to be the car. So I like that. That was great. That was great.
I'm even going to retroactively put the going after the urban family. That's actually got to be my number one best. I think I was looking. I think I was looking so closely at all the minor problems, like
Yeah.
which there's just a blizzard of,
Right.
that I missed that one, which is actually really solid. So
Yeah.
I would put that as my number one, and bump my Igor thing, and then just forget about my Malkovitch outfits in one op.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my new list. Worst. I mean, Sarah's pivotal to the movie. It's a way less interesting movie without her in it, but there's still, like, it's really flimsy the way that they bring her into the story, and even once she's brought in the first place, at no point to me does it make any goddamn sense that they bring her, especially into like these, super dangerous, tense situations. Like, she had no reason being at Dunning's house. She had absolutely no reason going into Langley with Frank. And that's my number 3 worst tradecraft. And in any other movie, that easily could have been a number 1, because that is big.
Right.
But I think I can beat it, and I think I can beat it twice. Here's my number 2. My number 2 is that KGB Brian Cox knows Langley inside and out and can just infiltrate, knows all the passcodes and the security protocols. Even if I could forgive that for a moment, the fact that Frank Moses knows that Brian Cox has that kind of information and never felt like mentioning it to the CIA, that's really bad.
Yeah.
And that could have been my number 1 worst in a lot of movies, but I can top it. Frank Moses, upon finding out that Carl Urban accessed his file recently, goes to Cooper's office and starts a fight with him. Has absolutely zero reason for existing.
Yeah,
Except to give us a cool Aerosmith song.
And a fight scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was silly. There was no reason for that fight whatsoever.
None.
Those are some pretty bad ones, but my list, my number 3 worst tradecraft was telling Carl Urban he's going to kill the VP. I don't think it served any purpose.
It's a bad one.
That's a really, really bad one. Todd's number 1, but my number 2 worst tradecraft was going to Cooper's office. It doesn't make any, it was such a pointless fight. Anyway, all it did was create a problem for them to get out of Langley. But my number 1 worst tradecraft was calling the hits on the Reds in the first place. Why would they do that? First of all, like you pointed out, they didn't even really know why they were trying to get killed. They're trying to find it out. They know they were involved in Guatemala, but they didn't realize that the VP and a senator's son was the one that is the reason why all those villagers were murdered or whatever. They didn't know that. And even if they did, they didn't show any signs of exposing it. It was really just the reporter. So once the reporter was dead, then there was no the movie should have been over. But then we don't get a big romance with Sarah and Frank. Yeah, so I'm just going to put it out there. That's my number 1 worst tradecraft with calling the hits on the Reds.
It is the fundamental flaw of the plot.
Yeah.
Why don't you make me a pitch on park benches? I know where I'm going to land, but I want to hear.
I already know where I want it.
Okay, let's hear it.
I already know where I want it. I want it to be more real. I think it's more realistic than Spies Like Us.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. But I think it's less realistic.
It's a pretty low bar.
And for Russia with Love, we gave La Femme Nikita a 1.5.
Yeah.
So I think I want to go with that.
You're singing my song, except I'm gonna break in and say I'm also with you, like everything you just said.
Yeah.
Even to the point of saying, okay, yeah, higher than Spies Like Us. Again, low bar. We gave that 1 park bench.
Right.
Less than From Russia with Love, which we gave a 2.5. I think, and this has been bugging me for a long time, when we are assigning park benches right around in this kind of range that we're both agreeing on, This is the fourth time, I believe, that I've looked at our 1.5 that we gave to La Femme Nikita and thought, that seems a little low.
Yeah.
It's the only one. It's the only one that keeps bugging me.
And it was early on, so I can understand that we kind of messed that up, but yeah, maybe we need to retroactively give that a buff.
I think it's because that was maybe our first movie where the premise was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in the organization taking heroin addicts and turning them into assassins at all.
Yeah.
But then later, when we get to Bourne supremacy, like the Bourne backstory is almost as incredulous.
Right. Yeah.
So I feel like it's been enough time. I'm going to formally propose that we retroactively bump La Femme Nikita up from 1.5 to 2 park benches, and that we put it right alongside Red at a 2, which those would be then our 2s would be La Femme Nikita, Red, and our evaluation of Garrick, the Star Trek Cardassian spy.
That sounds good. Yeah,
they would all kind of line up. Are you with me with that?
I'm definitely with you with that. Yeah. All right. So we just gotta mark that it's been edited, and we're retroactively turning La Femme Nikita into a 2 park bench.
I'll definitely put an asterisk and a little comment in the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Sounds good. And that's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at spies_like_us. Visit us on our website at www.spieslikeus.net. You're going to find out about upcoming episodes. Also, what will really help us out is if you give us a review on wherever you found our podcast, either on iTunes or your Android app or YouTube or wherever you listen to us. Even if you didn't like the show, just give us a review. It'll help us, give us feedback so we can make the show better. And it can also help other people who haven't found the show yet find out about us. Hey, Moira, initiate Protocol 9.
Protocol 9 initiated. This podcast will self-destruct in 20 seconds. The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.